Good afternoon, everyone. Are we all ready for another day of interactive web dev? We'll give people another minute to get in and then we'll get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for now. I'd appreciate it if possible if people could turn on video so that I can see your smiling faces. Excellent. And it is 1:30, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so on Monday we started talking about Node.js, and I promised we would get into doing more. We wrote a very simple web server. Today I'm going to teach you a bit about how to create separate modules so that you can separate different tasks in different files. And this is still all Node.js. If we have time, and I believe we should, depending on the questions that we have, I'm hoping that we can also begin to get into using Express. So with that in mind, let's start coding. So I'm going to create a new folder to work in, I think. Make adjustments here so that I can read what I'm doing. So new folder, I'm in my Node folder that we created before. And I'm just going to call this modules demo. We'll go in there. What's the command I need to type to bring up a command prompt in this directory? Anyone remember? CMD, yeah. And that brought that up on my other screen, but let me resize it and move it to this screen. So it should give you a prompt about this size. I will make sure I'm only working on the left side of the screen, so you've got places to code on the right side. Okay, does anyone remember the command that we want to use to start a new project, where it asks you all those questions and creates the package.json file? I'll give you a hint, it starts with npm for Node Package Manager. Yes, good job, John. npm init, because we are initializing a new project. And now it's going to ask us all those questions. So package name, and it has default values. Most of the time, you can take the default value. So I'm just going to hit enter. Version 1.0.0, enter. Description, enter. Entry point, we want that to be index.js. So I'm going to hit enter again. Test command, we're not worrying about any testing. So enter. Git repo, enter. Keywords, enter. You can put yourself in for the author if you want. Enter. And then it shows us the full package.json it wants to create. And if I'm okay with that, I hit enter. So technically, you could just hit enter a whole bunch of times. It will generate that package.json for us. But the defaults, for the most part, work just fine, just like we talked about on Monday. Okay, so we've got our very second Node.js project ready to go. So let me open up a VS Code window that we can code in. Drag that on over. Open our folder. Interactive Web Dev, Node, Modules Demo. Okay. So what do I want my main JavaScript file to be called? I'll give you a hint. We set it in the package.json. Yes, Dylan and Nick, index.js. Excellent. Cool. So I've got index.js. Now, the whole point of this is we want to have some additional JavaScript file that holds information that we're going to use. And so I'm going to create a second JavaScript file. I'm just going to call it, we'll call it mods. Or actually, I'll go ahead and write it out. Modules.js. Let's make it clear. So what I want to do is I want to take stuff that I write in modules and load it into index.js. Let's start out by writing a couple of modules. First, what I'm going to do is let's create a function. I could create one const print this equals, and we'll pass in a message. And we'll console.log that message. Now, some of you maybe are pausing for a moment going, wait a minute, I'm doing a console.log, but we're coding on the back end, right? We don't have a browser. So where is that console.log going to output to? Any guesses? In the command prompt. Gold star, Dylan. And Colby, good guess there. And technically, if you're running it from the VS Code console, yes, that too would work. So both of you are correct there. Okay, so let me save that for now. I'm now going to import my mods.js into index so that I can access it from index. Excuse me. Let's see. That's not what I want to do. I want to say const mods. I'm creating a new variable. Require dot slash, that's from our root directory, modules. And you don't have to put the .js, it knows that's what you want to load. And so what this is going to do is it's going to take the contents of modules and put it into this variable mods. Now, this isn't technically going to work. But in theory, I should be able to say mods, print this, and we told it to take a message that it will then output. And I'll say, this is a potato. Now I want this to work. I really do. It's not going to. And we'll talk about why in just a minute. And so I'm going to say, can I just say nodemon? Would that work? Dylan's saying no. What's nodemon going to do?
Doesn't that just like update it or something automatically?
So it still runs the program. It's going to run index.js, just as if I were to say node index.js. But then if I'm actually running a server, it'll stop and restart the server. So I could do node index.js and that'll run it, but I'm getting an error here. And it says it has no idea what print this is. I mean, it should know. We loaded modules, right? put it into mods. We said, all right, run mods.print this. But the reason it doesn't know is because you have to directly tell your module to export the stuff that you want to be able to use. So instead of doing const, I'm going to say exports dot print this. And that's basically giving permission for anything that loads modules to be able to use print this. So if I try running it again, and I can run it just by doing node index.js. Oh, this is a potato. Or I could use nodemon like we used on Monday. And you'll notice nodemon keeps it running until I make changes. So maybe I want it to be a capital or a, exclamation point at the end of potato. I save that and it goes ahead and automatically reruns it as soon as I save. nodemon is always listening for those changes. Does that make sense? Cool. Let's do more. I could go into modules and I could write an old school function where we actually write out the function name. And let's make a hello function. Hello. And we'll pass in a name. And I could say console.log, use my backticks, hello space, $, and throw in the name, and yeah, maybe 3 exclamation points at the end there. Now, is this going to work? Tell me what's wrong with this. No export. Now, unfortunately, if I try doing exports here, oh, it doesn't like that. So with an old style function, what you have to do is basically take this function and put it into an exported variable. So I can say exports dot hello equals hello. If I do that, then I can come back here and I should be able to do mods dot hello Bob. Save that, and sure enough, this is a potato and hello Bob. Does that make sense to everybody? Why would this be useful? Why do we need to be able to load separate modules into our index.js?
Is it so index doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting? You kind of separate all the tasks out between.
Yeah, it makes for cleaner code, right? If you, let's say you create, keep in mind we're about to build a more complex web server. Let's say you create a really complex application. You want to scroll through index.js to find all of it? Or maybe would it be easier to break it up into pieces so you know exactly where to go? Does that make sense? So it's a way to keep your code a whole lot tidier. And it makes it easier to reuse code. So if you build a module for a specific task and you want to use that task again, you can just copy that file over and import it into, or require it rather, in a completely different application. Make sense? Okay. All right. So that's what I wanted to show you on modules, and that's an important thing to understand because we are going to use these later. But we're going to jump over into Express. But before we do that, go ahead and take a moment do the participation survey, if you would, on the LMS. And then we'll do some Express. I'll give you just half a moment. There's only one question. We good? All right. So let's come back here. I'm going to go back to my node folder. And I'm going to create a new folder here. And call it express_demo. Do not just call it Express, because the package we're going to be installing is called Express. And if you name your folder Express, by default, it will want to name your demo Express, and you'll end up having conflicts with the Express package. So call it something like express_demo, express_basics, something along those lines. And then let's move our current working folder to use Express demo. And I need to stop nodemon. Anyone remember the key command for stopping nodemon? Control-C, excellent. And just hit yes to stop it. Now you can just move directories by going cd space ... to step up a level. And if we hit dir, we'll see there's Express demo, and cd into Express demo. Now I am inside that empty folder. Or another way would be just from inside the folder, once again, typing in cmd, and that'll bring up a new command prompt for you. Whichever you would like. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create an index.js. And I got a new project here, so what do I want to type? New node project. What do we do every time we create a new node project? npm init, excellent. Here, I'm gonna size this down just so it's all on one line. So npm init, hit enter, and I'm just gonna enter on through, so it's gonna create my package.json. So this is what the package.json looks like. I'm gonna bring that up here. It is in JSON format. It has all the data that we talked about. Well, forgot to put myself as the author, so I'm gonna do that right now. And save it. Now, we need to install Express. Now, we've done an install before. We installed nodemon, and when we installed nodemon, we did npm install-g nodemon, and that installed it. Does anyone remember what the -g does?
It installs it globally.
It installs it globally, so we only need to install it once, and it works everywhere. We don't want to do that with Express. We want Express just for this particular project. So I'm going to do npm install Express. And it's going to create a new folder in this project, a node modules folder, which is right here. It's also filled out my package.json. It's created a package lock.json. We'll take a look in a minute. So inside the node modules folder, let's put a whole bunch of other folders with a whole bunch of other files in it. You'll notice there's Express, and a lot of these other folders are other modules that Express is dependent on in order to run. Does that make sense? So when we install Express, not only are we getting Express, we're getting a bunch of other packages because Express uses a bunch of other packages. And so added 50 packages from 37 contributors and audited 126 packages. 0 vulnerabilities found. Excellent. And again, I got some warnings here. Usually you don't need to worry about warnings. What you need to worry about are when you get errors. Warnings happen a lot. Often they'll happen if a package is using maybe a deprecated package as part of its dependencies. Often they will go away on their own and you don't need to worry about them. Okay, so something happened with my package.json. Do y'all see anything new in there that I didn't write? Or didn't okay?
The express line.
Yeah, this whole dependencies thing here. It's saying that my project requires Express of at least version 4.17.1. So that's now part of the package.json. In fact, if I were to delete my modules, just got rid of the whole modules folder, I can get it back now just by saying npm -i, or I could write it out and say install. If I do npm -i, it's going to reinstall Express and all its dependencies because package.json says that's part of it. We need that. And so it's just reinstalled that whole node modules. Does that make sense? Now, I will say this again later, but this is extremely important. When you submit projects for grading, do not ever include the node modules folder. I don't want that in the zip. Node modules get monstrously huge. They are really big. There are lots of files. For instance, if you're using React Native and you create a new project, it will automatically add 28,000 files to a node modules folder. That takes forever to zip and unzip. Don't do it. So when you submit projects, you'll submit everything except the node modules folder. The graders know that you've got a good package.json. They'll do an install on their machine. It's much faster. Does that make sense to people? Okay, cool. All right, so we've got Express. What the heck is Express? Does anyone remember? I mentioned it briefly on Monday. Any guesses? Don't be shy. Doesn't it make the code look blah? Good guess. Not so much. Its primary purpose, it's a web server, similar to what we built in class on Monday, but it has far more complex features. You can build very elaborate websites using Express. You can make it makes it easier for you to connect to databases. It makes it easier for you to generate dynamic content on a website so that you can actually build web pages on the fly. And we'll talk about doing that a little later. Okay, so we've got Express installed. I know that I've got an index.js. I'm probably going to need some things here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say const express equals, and I'm going to require Express. So that's taking that package, it's taking the contents of that package, just like we did with our modules that we had just created. It's taking the Express package and throwing it into a variable called express. And I think I'll stop there. Let's create another const called app. And within the express, within our express module, there's basically a way to set up a server, and it can be done as easily as saying app. We define an app variable, and we're going to say app get slash. I'll explain this in just a minute. Okay. So you all are familiar, hopefully, with your basic HTML methods, get and put. You heard of those before? Or post. Familiar with post? We've posted forms before. We did that a little bit. We did, I believe we did a post method in Intro to Web when we did the guessing game. You guys remember that? So a GET request usually comes through when you put a URL into your browser. And it says, go get me this information. Get me this web page. And by putting the slash there, we're saying, get me the root page from the server. Do you remember when we did something similar, we had two variables. What does that REQ and RES stand for? We did the same thing when we created our simple server on Monday. Any guesses? Yeah, request response, cool. Most people shorten those to just REQ and RES. I wrote them out on Monday, but so this is our request and this is our response. So we are passing the data from the request and the response. And we're gonna respond, we'll do a response.send, and we'll send hello world. I guess be grammatically correct, there we go. All right, so we've got our response.send. Basically what this is saying is when someone types in the browser the root address, that would be the top level address. So for Newmont, that would be newmont.edu. In this case, because we're running the server, we're going to be running the server on our machines, it'll be localhost :3000, because we're going to run it on port 3000 like we did before. So when someone goes to localhost :3000, it's going to respond by saying hello world. And the only other thing we need to do here is say app.listen 3000, which is basically just saying listen to port 3000 for a GET request. And that's all I need to do to have a basic server running. And to get this going, I can just do nodemon, so it's actually running it. And I bring up my browser. I type in localhost :3000 because it's port 3000. Sure enough, there it is, hello world. If I hit F12, I'm getting an error here because it's saying I don't have a fave icon. A fave icon that's one of these little images that comes up that's associated with different websites. You can put a logo there or whatever else. We'll worry about fave icons at some other point, but it's actually serving this page. Not a very interesting page, but if we look at the elements here, we can see it has generated my HTML. I've got, the head is empty, the body has hello world in it. So as far as the browser is concerned, we sent it an HTML file. Did we actually write an HTML file? I don't remember doing that. It's being generated dynamically. We just sent these words and Express packaged it all up. So at the end, we've got ourselves essentially HTML content as far as the browser is concerned. And so we can actually write HTML in here. We can go ahead and put an H1 tag and put our hello world inside there. And if I refresh, that will work. I don't have to stop my server because NodeMon, remember, is looking for changes and it stops and restarts the server automatically. And you can see here when we inspect the elements, there are the H1, open and close. So you might be like, okay, that's kind of cool. Can we do more? And the answer is, of course. Let's do an app.get. This time, instead of // let's do .hello. Or, excuse me, instead of just a slash, do /hello. And we will once again pass in our request and response. And this time, let's do something else. Let's say, let's get some params. And so I could say response.send. I'll use some backticks here. And I'll have H2. And it'll say, actually, we'll do a query first. Params get a little more complex. We'll say hello, $, stuff.name. I think what we'll do is we need stuff. So let's create a variable stuff, which is going to equal rec.query. So have you ever done an HTML query before? You actually do it all the time. You may not realize you're doing it. And we're taking that query data and we're throwing it into a variable called stuff. And we're hoping that someone actually puts a name in there. So I'm going to save this. And all this is happening at this location /hello. So if I were to say localhost :3000 /hello, that's going to take me to that page. And it's saying hello undefined. Now the contents of stuff is any sort of parameter that we put up here, anything in what's known as a query. And to create query variables, I can just put a question mark at the end and do name equals, give me a name. Any name.
Joe Star.
What was that?
Joe Star.
Joe Star. So Joe, and to do spaces, because URLs aren't happy with spaces, just put a plus.
Yeah, it's no spaces. It's no spaces.
Oh, it's one word. Like that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm actually using a query variable here. Again, you use a question mark and name Joe Star. Make sense? What if I want another variable? Like I could do ampersand species equals, is Joe Star a zombie? He will be today. So I hit enter, and now I'm still passing in name, but I'm also passing in species. I'm not doing anything with it, but I can now. So the $, oh, excuse me, $, stuff dot species. And if I save that, re-enter. But we know maybe Joe Star is not the zombie. We all know that Bob is the zombie. Or we could put in Harry, and it says Harry's a zombie, but Harry isn't a zombie. We know that he's a werewolf. Does that make sense? Have we used queries before? Yeah. We use them with APIs all the time. You guys remember putting in query strings on APIs? When we did the weather widget, we put in information about our location and how many days of forecast we wanted. This is an easy way for the server to read that data and do things with it. Kind of cool. Chaz, you're looking a little concerned. Something not working on yours?
No, I just barely got it to work.
Okay.
My money sign was separated from my stuff.species, and I was like, what the freak is happening? And then I just saw that little tiny error.
Does anyone not have this working? Cool. All right. So queries are powerful. They're useful for sending, for dealing with data that a user can send to you. Something else that's very similar to queries is params. So I'm going to do app.get, and let's put in some sort of param. Easiest way to do that. So params are defined by putting colons in. So I'm gonna create. We'll go to /goodbye, since we did hello already. And then I'm going to say /:name. And we'll pass in our request and our response. For my params, I'll just say let things equals rec.params or parameters. And we'll create our send. And this one, put our backticks in, put our H2 in. And we'll say goodbye, $, oops, things.name. Now, in this case, by putting the colon in front, we're not actually going to be doing a query. It's going to read it right from our slashes. It's going to see goodbye / whatever, and it's going to use that. So if I now, instead of saying hello (name), I'm just going to say goodbye /, which acts like it's a different folder, right? And so we can say Joe Star. And as far as the browser is concerned, Joe Star is actually just its own directory on the web server. But I can dynamically create pages now. So, Fred, Sally. Kind of cool. Do you see some benefits here? Okay. So I got a few minutes. I want to tie what we're doing here. This is beginning to look a little messy, isn't it? I kind of think so. So let's tidy this up a little bit by using additional modules. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it routes. Inside routes, I'm going to create a new file and call it routes.js. So let's go back to the index. And right after we require express, put a constant, call it routes equals require dot slash, in quotes, dot slash routes / routes. And again, well, and since we're creating this one, you can put a .js there. You don't have to, though. Some people like to put the .js so it's clear that it's something you created, but you don't need it. Okay. So let's go into our routes, and I'm going to create exports for maybe our index. And we'll put an equals there. And we're going to come back. And cut that function that we're passing into our app.get. And I'm going to paste it right here. See what's going on? Taking all that content, and now all I need to do is set this up so that it loads routes.index. Want to see that again? In routes, exports, hello equals. We're going to cut the function out of the parameters here, paste it right there. Routes, hello. Okay, go ahead and do the last one yourself. And if you've done it right, everything should still work exactly the same way. Everyone got it? I'll give you another moment. I see looks of concentration on a lot of your faces. Just set it up the same way that I set up the other two. So you should be able to do exports, goodbye, and be careful what you're grabbing here. What you want is just the function. So it's after the comma. You want all of this, but leave the close paren. And that's going to be routes dot goodbye. So does that make your code easier to read? In fact, you could even put all your GET requests together like that. So we know that when you go to the root directory, it's going to run routes.index. Oh, okay, it's going to run that. When you get to, if you go to /hello, it's going to go to routes hello, which we've got the code right there for that. And routes goodbye. Is that tidier? And you could create multiple modules. I created one routes.js, but you know, if you wanted to break it up and you've got a whole bunch of complex apps, you could create multiple modules that get imported for different types of pages, for instance. Okay, we are running out of time, so real quickly, I would like everyone to, let's see here. Got a poll for you that I'd like you to do quickly. Several people have not, well, a few people have not done the poll. Okay, we'll call that good. Okay, looks like a few people are still shaky on the back end versus the front end. That's okay. Understand right now, everything we've been doing today has been on the back end. This is all run by the server. Now, the code that it's generating, when it's doing these sends, it's generating code that gets pushed to the front end. Everything we're doing is all in Node. And I know Node looks just like regular JavaScript, but when you're working in Node, you're working entirely on the back end. The server is what interprets this. Your browser is only capable of interpreting HTML, CSS, and regular JavaScript. And we are generating some HTML and sending it to the browser. The browser never sees this $stuff.name. All of that is converted into regular HTML. The variable gets plugged in there, and that gets sent to the browser. So the browser never deals with that variable at all. All that is happening on the server. And right now, I know that's a little confusing because your laptop is acting as both the server and the client. What the browser interprets is what the front end is. That's the client. The server, that is normally off on the internet somewhere. And we are writing code on our laptops as if it's a server. And we're accessing it through that localhost :3000. And we'll talk about this more in the future. Dylan, your command prompt says that the app has crashed. Take a look to see if you have a syntax error somewhere. Make sure all your files are saved too. We are out of time for class today. Oh, Dylan, you got it fixed? Cool. Tomorrow, we will get into more detail and do cooler things with Express. We'll actually generate real pages. We'll start using a view engine called Pug. Anyway, take care. Have a good day. No new assignments. If you do not have the last one in, please get it finished up and turned in. And I will see you all tomorrow.